first off, you regret the things you don't do way more than the things that you do. For sure, you should do it, but you're going to get a lot more curveballs. Forgive all the baseball analogies. I'm sorry, I'm American, but you're going to get a lot more strange things happen than you imagine. So have more patience and if possible, more money, because you might have a rock solid business plan, which we did. But COVID, interest rates, inflation, and then now people just aren't drinking as much beer. And I'm sure it's cyclical. Beer's been around for thousands of years. I'm sure it's not going.
So, hello everybody. Welcome back to the London Food Network. I'm Sebastian Candelon, and this podcast is proudly sponsored by Embrace AI Consultancy, where we help visionary food and hospitality founders scale their impact via smart strategy and automation. So, today I'm thrilled to be joined by Jeremy from MotoSonora Brewing Co. Jeremy, hi, welcome. It's really great to have you.
Hey, thanks, Sebastian. I'm very happy to be here.
Jeremy, tell me, who's MotoSonora? Who are you, and how did it all come about?
Okay, easy enough. My name is Jeremy DeConcini. I'm the founder and CEO of MotoSonora Brewing in Tucson, Arizona. We're a small 10-barrel brewery. We just celebrated our 5th year in operation in March. So that's the short version of who I am and where I am. The longer version is, I didn't come from beer. I wasn't a brewer. I was always a beer fan. I was always on the search for the next exotic beer. And back in my day, but those were usually imports from Europe because the American craft beer scene was just kind of getting started. So this is, call it the late 80s, early 90s, where you could find some good American beers, but you could also, it was always the European stuff that was always the most interesting. But then that sort of changed throughout the 90s, and there was a craft beer boom followed by a little bit of a bust, and then a huge boom starting in, say, 2005. And I tried to kind of ride that wave.
Wow. It's funny because the first podcast I did actually was with Evan from the Colonel Brewery here in London. He actually learned, or at least he picked up his passion in America, which kind of led me to you actually, which is how I kind of thought this would be a great podcast, because I actually didn't realize that the whole beer scene started in America. I couldn't believe it. I thought this was definitely a European thing until I spoke to Evan, and he said, no, he very much went to New York one time and absolutely fell in love with the whole brewing process. And that's how he got started.
Yeah, it was a weird byproduct of prohibition. America, outlawed alcohol in the 20s and 30s. So the only breweries that survived prohibition were the really, really big and rich ones. And in the aftermath of that, the American beer scene was rather bland until they allowed, and I think it was 1978, they allowed you to start home brewing. And that just created this explosion of pent-up creativity, where people just started messing around in their garages and coming up with different things. And, to get into beer back then, you had to be a real kind of crazy person, because the only equipment that you could buy was, industrial scale from Germany for millions of dollars. So you not only had to be a good brewer, you had to be good with welding. So these guys would repurpose dairy tanks. They'd find old dairies that went out of business and weld those up to do the things they wanted. So you not only had to brew the beer, but you had to build the factory yourself to do it. So I came in at a time where it was actually a functioning industry. And so I'm kind of standing on the shoulders of giants in the sense that I can just buy what I need from good suppliers, as opposed to, I still did plenty of work in the brewery, but it's at a different level than those guys. The pioneers in that sense were very, very impressive.
So what? Well, let's go back to that point. So let's go back to near the beginning. And what made you decide to start MotoSonora, and what was the spark that led you to it?
Well, it's kind of a convoluted path. So going back to my desire for always seeking out the best beers, my brother and I and a bunch of friends, we were in Southern Africa in 2010, and we were driving around. The World Cup was there, and we'd rented these trucks that have tents, on the roof and refrigerators in the back. And we were going out in the bush. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And we were going out in the bush and camping. And Africa has a pretty big industrial beer scene that we knew nothing about, just because there were a lot of German immigrants to Africa. And so just as we were driving through country to country, you'd pick up different beers along the way. And usually they were just sort of a good quality German lagers, nothing too, out of left field, but they were all different brands and had different labels and different histories. And so we were just talking about those different beers, as well as the different vehicles we'd rented and the different issues you had on the way. And is this beer good? Or how many flat tires did you get? Or did your POS truck do this or whatever? And it just sort of, that conversation sort of spun into that beer, for overland traveling particularly, but traveling generally also, is just an integral part of the fabric of travel and experience, and those flavors that you're going to find in new places are different than what you'd
Yeah.
find at home, and that sort of informs your whole memory of the experience. And so at this time, we were like, when we retire someday, it'd be cool to have a little bar that had all these beers from around the world, and you could kind of, have that experience that way. And then I was living in San Diego, which has a very, very dynamic beer scene, and I was doing industrial real estate. And since brewing is considered manufacturing, all the breweries are always in these industrial parks. And so I helped a friend of mine open a brewery, a small one, and then I would help him brew and occasionally bartend there just because I found it
Ah,
fun.
ah,
But then I just started getting really plugged into the scene, and I realized that the culture of craft beer, at least in America, is something truly special. I've worked in a lot of industries, and most of them are cutthroat. Brewing is the opposite. I mean, they're
yeah, like a
tangential.
community.
It really is. It's still even hard to believe. I mean, my closest competitors are, I'm friends with them. And when I say close, I mean, they're blocks away, and we help each other out. If I need a certain chemical, they'll come and get it, or, I'll get it from them, or vice versa. If I need lids for my cans, same thing. We're always just trading.
Nice.
And yeah, there was an awards show last night in Phoenix that I couldn't get to. And I told the CEO of the brewery next door, hey, if we win an award, will you please go accept it for us? Because I won't be there, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. That's, you
nice.
don't see that in a lot of other industries. So that was what really pulled me there. Beyond the love of beer, which I most certainly have, it was truly the community aspect of it. And that goes to the customers too. I feel like, you know, America has a lot of bars that stay open late at night where people drink whiskey, and particularly in Arizona,
Yeah.
this is a bit of an exaggeration. But then at 2 a.m. they go out in the parking lot and have a gunfight. You know what I mean? Where breweries function a little more like pubs in the UK and Ireland, where it's a more friendly space.
Yeah.
More people are welcome. Bring your kids, bring your dogs, play cards. Have your event there. It's not just the Wild West, the way that a lot of places are, particularly in
Mm.
Arizona,
So yeah, it's very community focused, isn't it?
for
And
sure.
for fun enough, what you said about the kind of business to business community side of things is exactly what Evan said actually when I spoke to him about it. He said exactly the same. They'll help each other out. They'll talk to each other. They've all been through the highs and the lows together, one way or another. And it doesn't seem to be this competitive nature that you find in so many other industries. And I think in food in general, this is why I set up this podcast on the networking groups is because we're all in this together at the end of the day, and food touches so many different areas of life, whether it's food, drink, or even the logistics, everything that goes on in the food industry. And why not have these conversations? Why not have a bit of a community going? Because to run a business is a hard job. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of grit to get somewhere. So having a community around you to help, and you can help them out is really quite crucial, I think, to why we do it in the first place.
Yeah, and I was thinking about what you said about that earlier. I was at a bagel place the other day, and it was a chain bagel place, but you could see the manager. He was hustling. That guy really cared about his job, and he was doing a really good job. And he was going to give me a bagel, right, that I was going to eat. This was going to go into my body, and this person's a total stranger, but there's an intimacy there, and there's
Yeah,
a network, of what his hands touch and what he does and what goes into my mouth, and that it's sort of obvious, but in a world where everything is being digitized, that's
yes,
going to remain, and that is going to be our
yeah,
community, and it's incredibly
absolutely,
important.
man. Amen. I tell you what, food, drink, it's the one thing that binds us all together. It has no language, it has no
Right.
geographical limit. It's the one thing you can go somewhere and share a meal with someone, and you could exchange zero words with each other. But that food will somehow, or drink will somehow bond you, isn't it?
For
Where
sure.
else do you get that? maybe music similar, but apart from
Yeah.
that, there's not much else in this world that's going to bind you to any other human being in such a
Yeah,
nice way.
100%. Yeah.
And, of course, every business has highs and lows. And I wanted to dive in a bit on, what's been your biggest win so far? It's obviously been a battle to get to where you are. And, what's your biggest kind of achievement and why?
Well, I would say, honestly, because of how the last few years have gone, our biggest achievement is that we're still open, really, and we've been able to maintain our quality. So, I want to win awards every year that we're open, and I'm
Nice.
always trying to do that. And it's partly, I mean, quite frankly, it's partly a marketing strategy, but also it's a way of vetting our product, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
so intimately involved with it that, I need some outside feedback to make sure that we're
Yes.
still on the right path. So last night we got a bronze medal for our pale ale, which I'm happy to get. I was happy we were on the board. I was a little disappointed we didn't get gold, and there's always something to strive for. And I had some other beers in that competition that didn't win anything. I'd like to see the notes back on those and see how they
Yeah,
did.
absolutely.
But, yeah, it's when that's the thing. I think on a business level, there's a minimum quality that you have to achieve. And then beyond that, you're kind of wasting your time, and
Yeah,
really you should just be doing marketing. But at the same time, I don't know where that line is. So I have to do the best. I have to do the best that I can. You know what I mean? Because God forbid you dip below it.
yes,
Someone is really good at, quantifying this could be like, well, you could scale back your quality a little and no one's ever going to notice. Well, maybe, but I would notice, and I would just forever be
yeah,
insecure going like, why am I not making the best product I possibly can?
yeah.
So just have to try and do our absolute best. As we don't always hit, but if you have that intention about what you're doing, then, hopefully you'll succeed. So I would say the two big wins we have is that we are still open and we've been able to maintain our quality.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's what you described there, especially when you're kind of a young business or one that's not kind of multiplied too much, is that integrity about the product and the tie. It's this kind of tie between what you're putting out there and your own self and your personality, and you want to make sure that that product you put out there is part of you, is part of your personality, and absolutely you want to get it right because whatever people judge of that product is a direct judgment of yourself, isn't it? And what you're doing and how you're getting it out to market. So absolutely, you want to make sure that you're nailing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, at the end of it, you really only have your integrity. And if you don't make it, you don't want to have to explain to someone, be like, oh, wait, why didn't it work? You'd be like, well, because I thought I could get away with making a subpar product. You
Mm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
You want to be like, I went down swinging because, a lot of this is timing and luck and, capitalization and things like that. There's no guarantee you're going to make it. You could work your ass off and still fail. But, if you're doing the post-mortem on that later on, I'd be like, well, why didn't you make it? You'd be like, well, XYZ, but I tried my absolute best to do the best that we could. And if we didn't,
yeah.
didn't make it, didn't
And
make it.
what
But
actually, I'm curious as well, actually, Jeremy. So you've obviously got this tap room which looks incredible, and I
oh,
tell
thank
you
you.
what, the one that I visit the States, that's going to be in my on my roadmap for sure.
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. Either in my convertible car or motorbike, one of the two, or maybe both. Well, what else do you do? I mean, you must wholesale as well, right? You must be brewing for other businesses as well to create the kind of demand and the volume, because it
For
must be a
sure.
volume-led business as well to an extent.
Well, that's how we started. The goal was originally to have the tap room and beer garden pay all the bills, and then all of our profit and growth would be in distribution. And that was how we started, and
Yes.
we were off to a pretty good run of that. However, inflation and pricing and contraction of the beer market has really, really hurt us in that regard. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of giving up that ground. I mean, I'm not giving it up, but I'm not fighting for it because the grocery stores in the States are devoting less space to beer. I've got big competitors who can buy their aluminum cheaper, who have sales teams out there scouring all the convenience stores, liquor
Yeah.
stores, grocery stores,
Yeah.
talking to those buyers and managers and trying to get in there. And it's just me. I'm our CEO and our sales guy. Particularly when it comes to cans and aluminum, because our pricing is so high, I've kind
Yeah.
of let that go. We used to have 4 SKUs in grocery stores, lots of them. Felt really good as a founder walking in and seeing all your beer in these,
Of
big
course.
stores next to some really good brands. But then when you sharpen your pencil and you do the math, you go, wait a minute, I'm not making any money here. I'm just moving this big pile of money around. You know what
Yes.
I mean? So I haven't, we're still out there. We're still in I don't know, maybe 20 stores. But when it comes to wholesale distribution, we still do a lot of keg beer out to bars and restaurants.
Uh-huh. Nice.
There still is money there, and I still am happy about it. And it's weird. There's a cultural thing in the States where you have these bottle shops that are always rotating their taps, always. And that's why people love them. They come in, there's always a whole new menu of beer. Whereas for me as a business owner, I mean, I like to be on in those places. I like to be shown off that way. But as a business owner, I prefer just getting a tap handle in a place that sells a lot of
Yeah.
beer, and this becomes their house beer, right?
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely. You want the
so much
regular, you want
easier.
the predictable outcome, right? You want a predictable sales pipeline where you can plan your brewing, you can plan your logistics, your staffing, and all the rest of it.
Exactly. This happened recently. I had an account in Flagstaff, which is pretty far from Tucson, and they took us off. Somebody with a better sales team came and convinced them to change us. And it completely I didn't realize for this one format of this one beer, they were just like taking it all. And then all of a sudden I was super long on inventory on this one particular, I was
Yes.
like, wait, what happened? I was like, oh, that one account, we lost it. So, yeah, you just had to, plan for that kind of stuff. But also, yeah, I'd much prefer, the regular business. Like you said, business loves predictability. And that was one of the
Mhm.
hardest things over the last 5 years. It's just we could never really predict our costs and
Yes.
we couldn't predict our interest rates on our debt. When we borrowed the money to open the place, we borrowed it at 3%, and interest rates have been stable for like a decade. And I was like,
Yeah.
how high could they go? Well, I learned.
Yeah.
I learned exactly
Yeah.
how high they could go.
I know. Tell me about it. Awful. Someone's making a
Yeah.
lot of money, that's for sure. That's
Yeah, well, that
Philly
was the
is
point. Our revenue was growing every month, but my interest rates were going up every month, and I felt literally like I was working for the bank because it's not like their
yeah.
risk had changed, their exposure hadn't changed. They were just like, "Oh, thanks, you're doing a great job, keep it up,"
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
just kept shoveling them money.
Wow.
It was tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad, isn't it, really? For the hard work
Yeah,
we do in these industries is, but you know what? I think that what you said, it touches on something that I think so many food businesses get to, like I did. And to realize, and actually this is off the back of I don't even remember who told me this once, but they said turnover is vanity and profit is sanity. Because I was at a very similar stage to you and almost went bankrupt at the time because I just stretched myself so thin to acquire as much market share as I could that I dropped my prices, I dropped my quality, and I dropped my level of service just to compete with the big boys. And in the end,
right.
we weren't making any money. Fortunately, I had the realization of this, what the fuck am I doing moment? And, we changed everything before it was too late. But that was such an important lesson because I
Yeah,
tell you what, it's so easy to chase the sales. It's so easy to chase the volume and get lost in that. And before you know it, you're counting your pennies and you think, well, where the fuck is all the money gone?
right. What
And,
did I spend all that time
you know,
doing?
yeah, absolutely. So, it's not a bad choice to have gone that way. And, the good thing is now is it's easier. And I totally get your point. The sales, you wearing the CEO hat, you're the salesman, you're the this, you're the onboarding, you're doing so many different things that sales, it becomes almost like a secondary thing or even third thing on your to-do list every day. And before you know it, you're kind of, I don't want to say you're behind, but you lose a little bit of track of where maybe you should be at, or you could spend a bit more time here because that's a good area. Yeah,
Right.
it can be a very tough position to be in.
Yeah, we're
Absolutely.
we're in a strange position where we have a distributor that's the Anheuser-Busch distributor. So it's great, that's Budweiser. So it means that anywhere that Budweiser goes in the state of Arizona, we could potentially go easily on
Oh,
their truck.
nice, nice.
The downside of that is, we're a rounding error in their monthly business, so we don't get the attention that we would otherwise probably want from a smaller distributor. But what I'm kind of hoping on, like right now, I'm controlling what I can control. Whereas if I brew it in the back and sell it out the front, there's profit there. If I can bring people to our
Yes,
space, that works. I can control that. But if our quality is good enough and our reputation is good enough, I'm hoping, and this does work to a degree, that the distributor will feel that demand and respond. I don't expect them to do a
yes,
ton of favors for us, but if a bar or restaurant's asking for us, they can provide it. I mean, there's a chain of about 7 Italian restaurants in the Phoenix area that only changes their beer menu once a year, and our Italian Pilsner's been on there for 2 years. And I would never have been able to get that account on my own because of the distributor in Phoenix. And even if I could get it, I wouldn't want to drive, the fuel cost
yeah,
for me delivering
yeah.
individual
Of
kegs,
course,
hundreds
of
of
course.
miles wouldn't have worked anyway. So I'm kind of letting our quality and our distributor partnership kind of work in the background while I'm working on some more specific business things like reducing our costs. There's some really like boring things related to a fleet of empty kegs. It's a huge expense for breweries to either buy all those kegs, lease them, or whatever. And I'm fine tuning that system so that it becomes a variable cost instead of a fixed cost because my business is highly seasonal.
Yes,
And so I had all these empty kegs sitting around when we're not busy, and then I used them all when we were, but I was
yeah,
paying for them either way. Now I'm trading it to a variable cost. It's called a pay per fill thing, where I'll just get a bunch of unbranded kegs. Our kegs currently look beautiful. They have our logo on it and everything, but now they'll just be unbranded with a collar on it. And when I need more, I order more, and when I need less, I don't. And I only pay for the ones I use, so it'll save me thousands a month.
It's a smart move, man. Because again, we've got to be careful with business and ego, isn't it? Because sometimes you do, sometimes you feel that your name should be, we make this mistake again, thinking, oh, it's the brand, everything's got to be this, but then you
Right.
think deep down, does it really matter in this scenario? Does it really matter in that scenario? And yeah, it's all about understanding the balance between where to put your money, right? And
Yeah,
it sounds like that's a
100%.
big saving to be made. So absolutely, that's a good. Well, actually leads me to my next question, really. Because what I love about food is that the people that run any food or drink business, it's a certain caliber of person, and you need a certain level of grit. And many people enter the industry thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm going to create, well, let's say a beer. How hard can that be?" And
Right.
of course, there's a ton of, fuck this moments where, you want to give up because you've had this happen, that happened. I mean, you name it. I'm sure you've been through it like we all have, right? And you're still here. And I'd love to know what's been your biggest fuck this moment and what happened and how did you get through it?
Well, there were a couple. The first one came like our first week of opening. We had our soft opening, and then on Tuesday, the soft opening was on Saturday. And on Tuesday, they shut everything down for COVID. And
Uh,
I was like, guys, I went to my partners and I was like, guys, should we just mail the keys to the bank right now and go bankrupt right now and save 3 years of stress and nightmare of doing this?
amazing.
And I was serious. I was dead serious. And they're like, no, no, we can do this. We got this. Let's just fight it out. And I was like, okay, cool. All right, let's do it. And so we went for it. And then once I was committed, I mean, it's not to say I didn't have lots of conversations with bankruptcy attorneys and things like that. But once I was committed, I was like, well, we're going to keep going until we can't make payroll. Oh, and so far, we've been able to pull it. Another shit moment was about 18 months ago, where for the distribution part of our business, we were never able to keep up. We just didn't have enough brewers. We didn't have enough tanks. We didn't have enough anything. So I partnered with a much larger brewery to make two of our more popular brands, but their batch size was huge. And as soon as we turned that on, beer just was flying out the doors. And I
Right.
thought I'd solved it. I'm like, we made it. We're in great shape. But then as I was brewing a lot of beer and warehousing a lot of beer, there was a massive fall off in the market. Like it
Oh,
just
shit.
happened like a light switch. This was May of 24.
Why
And
is
it
that?
was,
What
I don't know,
happened?
I still don't really know, but everybody felt it. Maybe flights to Europe got cheap or something. Maybe just everyone took off for the
Wow.
summer. I don't know, but like it was like someone turned off the lights. And I thought about
Right.
all this beer that I'd forced on my distributor that I was going to have to buy back and eat. And it was huge money. And I could see the futures. This was May, and I knew that we had like months to go and like so much beer. And but only so much like a line of credit to absorb this. And I was just sort of, we worked it out. I made a couple of mistakes trying to do it, but I would say last August, I walked around every day looking like this. Like, how are we going to pull this off? And when are the people going to start coming back and
Shit.
drinking again? And they did. It took till October, and I worked through the inventory and I got through
Wow.
it. And also another thing that really helped is, when you're this sort of go-getter, founder, CEO type, you try to do everything yourself. And oftentimes you're the only one willing to do it. But right about that same time, my wife was unhappy with her job. And she's like, this job sucks. She's like, what do you have at the brewery? I was like, honey, we have unlimited work at the brewery. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
about money. We have all the work you
There you
want.
are.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I put her in charge of basically every bill and she's like our CFO, right? She just makes sure that,
Oh, that's
she knows
nice.
how to manage the money. And so that, first off, she's good at it and she can tell when vendors, because outside the craft beer industry, we have lots of adjacent vendors like gas suppliers and things that operate in a very
Yeah.
old school way that they're like, if they can put a hidden fee on there or raise your prices without telling you, they will. And once she started like scrutinizing that stuff, she just found all kinds of money. And so
Oh,
she just
wow.
like got way into it. And so now I can focus more on the beer and more on the branding and more on the developing the business itself. So I was like, I'll find revenue, you find profit. That was kind of the deal we
Wow.
made. So
That's a lovely formula, that is. That's a winning formula, surely. That's
yeah, I
a
think
game
so.
changer. Game changer.
Yeah. And it keeps me from having too many beers and thinking, what we need to buy, you know,
Yeah.
we need a better machine. No, no, we don't need that. At least not now. And
Nice.
so that was one of the smartest things I did. Now it didn't help the math that was happening last year that almost sank us, but having her there able to find money and do that. And she's still working on 3 or 4 big projects, the kegs being one of them. But we're close to like, having smaller problems instead of thousands of dollars a month problems, hundreds of dollars a month problems. And so,
That's
and we're kind of in
beautiful.
a
That's nice.
yeah, it's great. And we're in kind of a
Nice,
defensive
man.
posture now.
And
Mm.
if you could go back to
Yeah.
these moments where you could have made a choice and gone a different way, in hindsight now, would you have changed anything?
I would have changed a few things. It's kind of like what you said earlier, where you're going and you're chasing this growth and this top line revenue, which kind of what I
Mhm.
was doing because I thought we had this sort of meteoric sort of revenue spike for a while, and I was chasing it without looking too hard at the profit. Now we were new early on, so I was like, okay, well, profit will come later. Let's establish ourselves in the market and whatever. And
Yeah.
I thought my ambitions were fairly modest. But even in retrospect, I realized they were still 2 grand. You know what I mean? If we get there, we get there. I don't need to be a big shot. I don't need a Bentley. Oh, I'm happy just making beer and making a living doing it. So I need to kind of focus on that. I mean, I was a little reticent to be hospitality focused, mostly just because that's, I mean, running a restaurant or a bar, it's exhausting. And I'm 51. Luckily, we close early. It's not like I'm there till 2 in the morning. But I was
Yeah, it's
reticent.
still it's taxing, and
y-
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's 24.
Yeah, it is because Monday through Friday we have all the business stuff and the manufacturing stuff, and then on the weekends that's when a lot of our revenue is generated,
Yeah,
and that's
of
when
course.
the plumbing breaks and and whatever. So
Yeah.
it is a lot, but I've sort of embraced that, and I've come around to the notion that as much as I just wanted to send beer far and wide around the state or even around the country, if it got to that, by focusing just on our space, I realize I just have so much more control, because I hear accounts that be like, oh, this keg showed up warm or this other thing, there's always something.
Mhm.
Once it leaves the building, I've lost control of it. So lots
Oh,
of bad
yes.
things can happen to it that aren't my fault, but it reflects badly on me. So
Of
I
course.
can control this. And so I'm more focused there. And I might, if I could find the right deal, because there are people in that city, Tucson's 1 million people, so it's not that small. If I could open a small little tap room on some further reaches parts of town where people won't make the trip downtown to us, I would
Mhm.
probably do that. So I could utilize my factory and still get some retail revenue as opposed to wholesale
Yes.
revenue. That's kind of the next step. But I'm
Well
kind of tired of trying to put my will on the universe. The right stars have to line up to make that happen. I'm not going to force the issue anymore.
well, that was my next question, actually. So you're kind of answering it there. Well, looking ahead, where do you see MotoSonora in the next 3 to 5 years, or in fact, let's go shorter term, 6 to 12 months? Where are you headed?
Well, I would say 6 to 12 months, I would like to increase our profitability entirely through cost savings and reconfiguring the business. That's my first thing. And then by the end of that 6 to 12 months, I would like to have a food situation at the brewery. If I'm running it or someone else, I don't really know.
Well,
I had
serving food, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I think
Cool.
on a hospitality level, just having a brewery that serves beer on its own is not
Yes.
going to do it. In fact, I just got a wine license earlier this year so that I could have wedding
Nice.
receptions and things, right? I mean, I'm a brewery. I think you should be drinking beer. Not that I don't like wine, but some people turns out they love the space, but they don't necessarily drink beer. And so I had to wrap my head around that concept and go, okay, well, listen, you're
Well,
in business
or
to
if
be
you
in
bring your
business.
partner and your partner wants wine, if it's a bit of diversity, of course, expands that market that you can appeal to, isn't it? So
Yeah,
makes
exactly. So
sense.
I'm just
Makes sense.
leaning more into the hospitality, and I'll need to come up with a good food solution. I bought a bunch of equipment from a brewery that went out of business in San Diego. I was going to open a deli, where you could have sandwiches and things like that. Nothing too
Nice.
challenging on a kitchen level, but construction costs have gone so crazy that when I started getting bids, I was like, I'm not paying this. I don't have the confidence to take this kind of risk. I'm not going to
Yeah.
drop thirty thousand
Yeah. Yeah.
dollars
Yeah. Yeah.
when they weren't even moving a wall. They just needed to install a sink, and I had all the equipment. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to fight this. I'm going to put this stuff in storage, and I'm going to use it in the future or I'm going to sell it. I don't know, but I'm just waiting for the right moment to make the move. Or if I had someone who actually knew what they were doing and said, hey, I
Yes.
want to rent this space from you, I would build it, sign a lease to them, and then it's a win for them and it's a
Yeah.
win for us.
Well, do you know what?
I just
That's what Evan did actually at the Kernel Brewery here. He's created a
okay,
kitchen, and actually he's rented out to another guy called Chris. And I'll tell you what, that's been a game changer for him, I think, because that kitchen is busy, and because it's busy and it's making food, people stay for longer.
for
It's as
sure.
simple as that. So he's paying, obviously, Evan, what I don't know what the agreement is, but either a percentage on the turnover generated plus rent, or
Sure.
maybe just a percentage of the whichever way. But he doesn't have the headache, and then you've
Yep.
got someone that's their own interest managing that, and they can obviously run it really well without you having to worry. So that it seems to be a good formula for him, and that
Yep.
place is busy all the time, all the time.
That's great.
Growing your tap room potential with diversifying through food, maybe some wine. What about online? We haven't really talked about online, but do you sell much online?
No, the laws are very strange. There are certain states that I can sell to. I can sell online within the state of Arizona and ship, and then there are certain states, maybe 7 or 9 in the country that I could ship to. And because just the expense of freight, for a six-pack of beer. I haven't chased it because
Hmm.
I just don't think anyone in their right mind, unless they were just such a fan of the brand and they just like our logo,
Yeah.
or something like that. Because particularly in the summer, dude, if I ship you a six-pack of beer across the country, it's gonna sit in hot warehouses on hot trucks and get roasted. By the time it gets to you, it's probably not gonna be as good as it could be. I mean, it'll still be drinkable,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so, and you're gonna pay
Yeah.
double for it, and, beer is generally best closest to the brewery. Right now in America, we're spoiled for choice for beer, and beer is having a tough time right now, and a lot of breweries are going bankrupt, but
Hmm.
there's still I guarantee you, if you're in a town of any size, there's probably at least one good brewery there. So, it's like, I would do it if I just felt the right pressure. If I got 10 phone calls a day saying, "Hey, I'm in Wisconsin, how do I get your beer?"
Hmm.
I would
Hmm.
I would do it, but I would need that sort of prodding
Yeah. So
to
not really a
suggest.
priority list. You got other things that can bring you a greater return, basically for less
Exactly.
effort, really. So you mentioned obviously the wholesale side of things. Selling to retail stores is something that you're not quite thinking about too much. Possibly expanding more into the food service, other bars, hotels. I think you said as well. Maybe is that what it was?
Yeah, yeah, we're in a I mean, we probably, if you count all the grocery stores and everything, we probably have around a rotating list of about 100 accounts. And so,
All right, that's
you
decent.
know
That's
yeah, yeah,
decent.
it is, it is. It's yeah,
That's
it
decent.
it matters. And now that we've got our costs sort of under control and what makes money and what doesn't, there's actually profit there, and profit that you don't have to work very hard for. Uh,
No, I
one
think
of
I
the things
find that
I do. Go ahead.
the hard job with retailers is to get them on board. But once you've got them on board, if you're doing well, you're delivering the quality, you've got the service, you've got the price right, then it kind of just tickles on in the background. You don't have to actively sell it so much. It just kind of
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.
does
And
its
one
job.
of the things I do is, because we don't have a sales team, once a month, I have a happy hour at my bar for all of my distributors, sales reps, managers. They can bring the truck
Oh,
drivers if they
nice,
want, and I buy all the beers. And so, the mountain to Muhammad kind of thing, rather than me going
nice,
out and hitting every account in town, I just bring all those sales reps and give them beers, say, remember me, stay in your mind,
no,
when you're
that's a
out there
good,
working.
that's a smart move. Nice,
Yeah,
that's
that
a
that
smart
was
move.
it works. Yeah, I'm pleased with it.
And what do you think is like your biggest, I guess, hurdles, let's say, to take things to the next level? What are the things you struggle with most on a daily basis?
Mostly it's just capital. The one thing I've learned
Mhm.
with business is, if you have deep pockets, you can take a lot of chances and
Yeah.
really find the one that works. I mean, there's an argument that I should hire 2 salespeople, leverage some capacity at some other breweries, and just go out and just try and sell, sell, sell.
Yeah,
But,
right.
that's a year's worth of salaries I'd have to pay on where that money would come from, and then spin it up, and then if it didn't work, eat all that loss, which I
Mhm.
really just can't afford to do, which is nice in the sense that I don't really ask these questions anymore. Like, can we afford it? The answer is no, then we don't do it.
In an ideal world, if we had, an amazing sales force, what would you concentrate your energy on though? On the retail side or the more kind of
I would do both.
kegs and hulks?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
bit of
one
both.
of our issues at the brewery is we have a lot of parking, but it's not attractive. Americans, and Tucsonans in particular, they like to be able to drive their car right up, walk to the front door. Ours is downtown in an industrial area. You kind of got to go in the alley, and it has almost like a kind of a speakeasy vibe, just because you know, it's kind of a sketchy, industrial neighborhood. But we lease the building next door where I have my offices, and then we sublease to some other people. But I would probably scrape that building and just turn it into a big parking lot. It would increase our visibility from the road, and then I could have cars and coffee events and things that are sort of brand specific. So I would do that on a hospitality side, and I'd probably build a nicer kitchen if I had cash, and then find the right partner to lease it. And then I would hire sales staff and go out around the state and make sure that, they hit their targets so that they could, pay for themselves and actually make money, you
Yeah,
know. And the thing is, I mean, I'm a smart guy, but really I am more of a craftsman or a dreamer. And I like making the beer part. The thought of managing a sales team, I can
yeah.
do it.
Tell me about it.
It doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound fun. You know what I mean? But I would do it. If we
Oh,
had the
it's not.
cash,
It's
I would
not
do it.
fun. It is difficult. That's another job in itself. Really, quite literally. It's
Yeah.
But having said that, it's doable. And the fortunate thing we live in these days is automation is very much accessible to everybody. So
Oh, for
there are
sure.
ways which you can run things in a way that doesn't actually require recruiting too many people, if any. That gets a lot of traction. Yeah, I think, look, Jeremy, it's an incredible business you built, man. Like
Oh,
you say,
thanks.
the biggest, like anyone that would say, honestly, the biggest kind of looking down at that mountaintop moment is that you're still there, right? Because we've been thrown all kinds of shit. What does it say? A shit sandwich? Is that what the
Yeah,
Americans
yeah,
say?
we ate a lot of those.
Yeah, and we're still here, and I think that's a
Yeah.
massive testament because, like you say, in the food industry, you're either a big name or you're not such a big name, and the big names have got so much money, they've got so much power that they try and crush you all the time in their own ways because they've got the bigger budgets, they've got bigger pockets, and
Oh yeah,
to
they can
still
just advertise you
stand
into
there,
oblivion.
you know.
Yeah. Well, and
So I
I'll
think
tell you
that's
another
awesome. You've
thing.
done an amazing job.
Thanks. And another thing, some of this is it's not luck, but another thing that saved us was we bought our building. I know
Nice.
a lot of breweries that started in say 2015 on a 10-year lease. 2025
Yes.
rolls around, landlord says, "Hey, your rent's up 30% or 40% because
Yes.
the neighborhood's much nicer now than when you guys started there, largely
Yeah.
because you guys went there. They got even though their business was fine and then on the next day it's not fine and they're gone. By owning our building, our rent is fixed and
Oh man, that's a
that's
massive, massive game changer because you never know as well if you're going to get kicked out. That's the other one. You might
completely your
spend
lease
all
is
this
up.
money, you might create all this infrastructure, spend a fortune, and it's expensive to produce food or drink. It's expensive, so it's a
Yeah.
costly setup. So to have to then move somewhere else, poor, yeah, headache.
Yeah. So that's yeah. If anyone's thinking of opening a brewery, if you can own your real estate, that'll at least then that cost is fixed. I mean, for us, we borrowed
Yeah,
all the money and it was on a variable rate, so it ultimately
yeah, yeah.
wasn't fixed. But
Well, it gives you more leverage as well, right? On the borrowing, gives you a lot more leverage
for
to know
sure,
that you actually own something. You have an asset to borrow against if need be. So that's good, and it's the peace of mind, isn't it? I think you get to an age now. I'm 42, man, and peace of mind. I like to sleep nowadays.
yeah,
These days
yeah.
of putting too much on the table are gone. I think to myself, these days you gotta be more calculated in your risk taking because I tell you what, the years they go by very quick. You don't get them back, so be very careful how you spend that time.
Yeah, exactly. And every loss, if you take a loss in your 20s, you can come back. You take a loss in your 50s, you're like, I don't know if I have enough runway to solve
Yeah,
this
exactly.
problem.
Absolutely,
So,
man. Just the last question to close, really,
yeah.
Jeremy. I'd say because I want this to reach a lot of younger listeners as well. And what would you say to a younger, to a younger you, or to the younger you? What would you say to the younger you that was thinking about setting up? What words of advice would you give somebody?
Oof. I would say do it. First off, you regret the things you don't do way more than the things that you do. For sure you should do it, but you're going to get a lot more curveballs. Forgive all the baseball analogies. I'm sorry, I'm American, but you're going to get a lot more strange things
Yeah.
happen than you imagine. So have more patience and if possible more money because you might have a rock solid business plan, which we
Yes.
did, but COVID, interest rates, inflation, and then now people just aren't drinking as much beer. And I'm sure it's cyclical. Beer's been around for thousands of years. I'm sure it's not going anywhere, but be prepared for a lot more bumps in the road than you think. I'm sure you're as smart and motivated as you think you are. However, you don't know what you don't know. And seeing the future is very challenging,
Yes.
so make sure your fundamentals are as strong as they can be to weather whatever thing is about to happen that you did not see coming because there will be some of those. I mean, unless you're lucky. I mean,
Absolutely.
some people just hit it right, get the timing right, do it right, and blow up. That does happen, but that's one in a million. For every one of those, there's lots of us that struggled through. Some of us made it, some of us didn't. And some of it's down to grit, like you said. I mean, I mean, there was a point where I was willing to live at the brewery. I was like, okay, if I sell my
Yeah, me
house
too.
and I do this, I can put a cot here. There's a shower over there. Like you gotta be kind of willing to
We're
to go
crazy, isn't
all
it?
in.
It's just it takes a certain person to run a food business, that's for sure, or
Yeah, yeah,
food
you
and
gotta be
drink,
a
sorry.
little nuts,
You gotta be a little
which is
bit.
fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Jeremy, this has been an incredible podcast. I really appreciate your time, and I'm gonna leave it with that. I think if you want to plug in your socials now or where people can find you, please do, and
Yeah.
let people know where to find you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Sebastian. This has been a great conversation. Yeah. So we're MotoSonora Brewing in Tucson. You can find us online, www.motosonora.com. That's MotoSonora. We're in the Sonoran Desert, and we're next to the Mexican state of Sonora, and we believe in road trips and racing and things like that. That's the moto part, so MotoSonora. And then Instagram is at MotoSonora Brewing. I don't remember our Facebook handle, but we're pretty easy to find. That we
Very
picked a
similar.
name that couldn't be confused with anything else, which is
Awesome.
actually another good piece of business advice. When you're going to start something like this, make sure you get something that you can trademark, because
Yes.
probably someone's thought of it before,
Yeah,
so
especially
figure
these
out
days,
something
right?
unique.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that was where we
Nice.
landed. Well, thanks
Jeremy,
so
you've
much,
been
man. I really appreciate it.
fantastic, man. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. And thank you all for listening to the London Food Network's podcast. Really appreciate your time. I'm Sebastian Candelon.
Yeah, I'm Jeremy DeConcini.